Welcome back to Super Sentai Review, episode 273. We're here reviewing the first of two films released that came out during when Kakuranger was coming out, and this is just this is basically Ninja Sentai Kakuranger the movie. Takes place between episodes 8 and 9. 9 I'll talk about the next episode. Don't worry about that. Now, the thing is, I've seen this movie once before. Yeah, I've seen it once, like 7 years ago. By the way, the villains of this movie are basically two brothers, the Dungy brothers, who actually... No, it's not Dungy brothers. It's the Hisokazu brothers. Them and there is one other villain that pops in this movie, Okindaru, who's like the son of the president of the biggest yokai bank. Yeah, these three are like the main villains. Now, here's the thing. Was this guy adapted for Power Rangers? No mention if he was, per se. As the two brothers, however, you might be thinking, were these two guys adapted for Power Rangers? No mention of it at all. Nope. And of course, we also appearances in the movie, but they're not villains in the movie per se. Of course, the Doros in the movie, obviously. We also appearances by a monster known as Sentai, who's basically there as a background character. He doesn't really do anything at all until episode 11. But mostly, some of these monsters are just there, just to say, hey, we're here. He's not the only one. Nope. There is also... I think that's it. I remember seeing one other monster appear in this movie. Dorobaru? Yeah, he's here. I remember seeing him in the movie. Yeah, first appearance in episode 3. This only was his third appearance. He does make one more appearance in the very next episode. Yep. I'll definitely talk about his appearance soon. But soon we're going to get past the... Now, with the next review, I'm actually... Well, I'm going to do 4, basically, from this one. But it'll be kind of getting toward the very end of the independent yokai before they get their first major general. Which is something that wait 14 episodes in to finally establish this thing. Yeah, I think it's kind of weird. What is the plot of this movie? Well, we have basically where two siblings live by them. Well, they're basically their father's overseas. Their mother works part-time even on Sundays. So you have the older sister who's like cleaning the house, and of course the brother wants to go to the arcade, but of course they can't because they gotta save money for reasons not really explained here per se. So the kids who basically go to the arcade by the station, they leave. Now, if you're curious, was this a common occurrence in the 90s where kids go to the arcade? For what I remember growing up in the 90s, and this is basically barely remembering it at all because I was a little kid in the 90s. As a matter of fact, I went to elementary school in the 1980s, so I barely remember this stuff. I remember stuff in the 2000s. I do basically the 1990s. I remember the clothing. Going to arcades, I think this was a popular thing even back in the 80s per se, but here's the thing. There was a daycare I went to where they actually had arcade machines there, which I thought was really cool. Didn't pay anything at all. They actually had one game cabinet there, and they had a few game consoles there. They had 2 Sega Genesis and a PlayStation 1. This is basically when I was in the first grade that I went to this daycare. Yep, and then after being there for like a year, I got transferred to a completely different location. Yep. So, going to arcades. Now, I've been to arcades. There actually still are some arcades still active, but they're not as popular as they once were. Normally, arcades nowadays are part of like amusement parks nowadays. Like, I believe, if I remember correctly, I think Magic Kingdom's got one. They have one next to Space Mountain. It's been a while since I've been to Space Mountain. It's been a couple years, but I believe it's still there when I was last there. But there's also a place called Malibu. It has like a go-kart track. They have a big arcade machine there, arcade area, and was there. I got a chance to play the original House of the Dead. Yes, the arcade version. That was one of a couple times I played the game. It's a fun game to play. Is it better than the movie? Oh, heck yes, because the movie itself barely has anything with the game. Especially since the whole movie is set outside compared to the movie where it's like inside of an actual house. And we don't see a house like in the movie, but this is something different altogether. So, and then we have the two idiot brothers show up where they really want to play mischief for the house. And apparently they really want this house for some reason. Excuse me. And of course they're spooked away by the Kakurangers. Like, oh crap, it's a Kakuranger! And they run away! They run away, but then of course the Kakuranger fight them. And of course, basically, there's only one protection doll. And it turns out these two guys are just lackeys for the idiot who's the real main villain in the movie, who just wants the house for part of his little yokai city. Which, in order to appease him, per se, going to the house, like, the younger was like, hey, boss, why not take Tokyo Tower? He's like, good idea. And he takes Tokyo Tower along with a few cars. Yeah, he also moves around buildings. And of course, news thinks it's some earthquake. By the way, the world has barely noticed the yokai at all. They probably don't think they exist because they probably didn't make much of an impact per se. And probably also because the battle between the yokai and the Kakurangers are kept very secretive. Unlike, let's say, the stuff with Die Ranger a year prior, where that was semi-open. This is very much a secret battle between ninjas and yokai. Yep, and eventually they do get the house after they threaten the little girl's, the young girl's little brother, and throws the doll, and of course they take the house anyways. And this is really weird. It's like, it's a model set, and apparently people inside it's like the real world. It's really weird. They don't really go into it at all. Oh, before I continue here, the movie itself is like 11 minutes longer than a regular episode. Yeah, the opening episode, I forgot to mention this in my first view for this one, it's 21 minutes. It is the longest episode out of all of these because of all I've seen so far, they're generally, like, if you take out the credits, it is roughly 17-18 minute episode compared to the first episode was about 20 minutes, so it's a few minutes shorter. This movie is actually longer than that. And eventually put by the end of the movie, basically all three are destroyed. The house gets back to normal, but they also get like into a trap. We also have them transform in the movie when they're briefly captured to, get this, first a fire extinguisher, and then they also transform into a saw, a drill, and then of course they run around the break thing, goes cage. First new Nepo cage escape, and it's like Nepo hacksaw, Nepo drill. After a while, it basically burns. Heck, basically, they have a whole thing where they basically use Sasuke as a fire extinguisher. He just runs out of breath. I'm like, what? It's slapstick. What do you expect? Could this have been a regular episode of a series? Yes, but they probably would have had a way to stretch it out for 2 episodes. Based on how many monsters are here, there's like 3 regular yokai monsters. And they do come back in the final episode. But the primary use this is just this movie, or we continue to have background monsters, one of whom is going to have a role in the very next episode. I'll get to that next review. But the movie itself is okay at best. It's not terrible. It's just basically, if you like Kakuranger, you'll like this movie. Oh, and also, if you get this series on the Shout Factory DVD, they do not include this movie at all. Because it's a movie, and it's different license. Also, the subbing is mostly the same from what I can tell, except that they changed one word. They changed actually 2 things. Number 1, in the main show, the subbing I see is Super Transformation. Here it's like Super Henshin, I think they call it. And they call the Shogun Megazord, the Sentai equivalent, they call it Mighty Shogun, the movie. I'm not sure why. Maybe just a translation. It's different translation for some reason. Do I think Mighty Shogun basically is better than what they call it? It's fine. I don't have an issue with it, though. I think it's kind of weird they call the transformation like these different wording. It's like they'll go for the what they're saying. Yep. But yeah, that's took up you. Next up, I'm gonna go straight to the Rise of Hero. Okay, next video. Bye.